Hello everyone, my name's Kitetsu and welcome back to my channel. So this video is going to be all about Warhammer the Old World, and it's going to be an attempt for me to think about what is Warhammer the Old World actually going to be. So far there are a lot of unanswered questions. Games Workshop are being incredibly cagey about what the Old World actually is. I infiltrated like a wonderful Marathi spy the Old World Facebook group, and I'm seeing people ask questions that even now we know the answers to. So this is an attempt for me to try and compile some of those answers, but I guess also question, what is this going to be? What am I hoping for it? What am I really hoping isn't going to happen? And yeah, let's try and get some of these facts straight. Now, I guess I have to say right from the offset that because this is years away, yes, I appreciate that I am massively hyping something up that is so far away that some of you might think this is a bit premature for me to be getting so excited about it, but literally this week I've gone out and spent a small fortune on starting an 8th edition Empire army. Whilst I'm waiting for Warhammer the Old World, I intend to get into Warhammer Fantasy big time, so I'm really excited. I'm cautiously excited, let's say cautiously excited about it. There is potential for this to be one of the best things that Games Workshop has ever done, but there are also opportunities for them to make a few mistakes along the way. Now, before I get into the video, I have made a Warhammer Facebook group called the Kitetsu Warhammer Clan. I launched it last night on my Twitter. So far it's pretty small, but you know, growing, and I have two amazing moderators who've been doing a fantastic job helping me out. But yeah, if you want to have a nice communal area where all of us can chat, talk about our favorite models, predictions, rumors, share models that you've painted, engage in polls, then that's going to be an amazing place to go. So go onto Facebook right now, search for Kitetsu Warhammer Clan, request to join that group. Now, let's get into the video. So what is Warhammer the Old World going to be? I'm going to be running through kind of like an FAQ, I guess. The first thing I'm going to say really simply is obviously this is a reboot of Warhammer Fantasy. It's an opportunity for what I'm going to call Games Workshop to undo a mistake. And that mistake was they should never really have cancelled Warhammer Fantasy. Don't misinterpret those words. I am not saying Age of Sigmar should not have happened, because I love Age of Sigmar too, but they definitely should have handled it in a slightly different way. They shouldn't have just cancelled it and said, right, that's it, it's gone, done, the end of it. There is so much potential left in this world, like Vermintide 2 and Total War Warhammer has proven. It's an amazing universe with such a fantastic backstory that we need it to come back. Okay, that much is absolutely certain. But yeah, I'm thinking I will make a whole second video on why Warhammer Fantasy was cancelled in the first place and why it was kind of inevitably heading that way. They needed to do something, but they could have handled it better. Let's put it that way and let that hatchet lie. But yeah, so a reboot of Warhammer Fantasy, it's bringing the old world back. Now, the first thing we know without a shadow of a doubt is it seems that square bases are very definitely coming back. So probably a little bit frustrating for everyone who has rebased their fantasy armies onto round bases, but it does appear to be the case that squares are going to be the new thing. Now, if you haven't seen this, everything comes round again, even squares. This was posted on the Warhammer Facebook group in a little video asking if you missed square bases. So I think we can safely say that the old world is going to be on square bases. Now, the next thing I want to say is the old world is clearly going to contain a twist on things we are familiar with. So if we look at the Kislev army we've seen so far as an example, the Ice Guard are an entirely new unit. The visual elements are fairly new. They definitely don't entirely look like something we've seen from Kislev before, and they also have access to magic in a way that they wouldn't have in the lore before. So are we going to be seeing quite a few retcons, additions to the lore, twists on things we've already seen? Even the bears before weren't armored and now they're covered in armor. This one's even got glowing crystals all over it. So yeah, expect to see differences to the things we've seen already. Now, the next thing we can confirm is it's absolutely a Forge World project. They've been saying pretty much in every article that there are Forge World people working on this, so we can absolutely say that's the case. Now, what I want to tie that to is two things. Forge World are known for making resin models, very high quality resin models, but also very pricey, and that is putting people off the possibility possibility of the old world being something they want to collect. Now, I understand that issue. I'm much more of a fan of plastic models than I am resin models, but this doesn't necessarily mean every model in this range is going to be resin, and I will point you to the burning of Prospero to illustrate this fact. For some reason, the Horus Heresy, which is a Forge World kind of property, for want of a better word, had two really cool and amazing boxes that were released by Games Workshop, and they were plastic. I asked Chapter Master Valrak why they released these from Games Workshop in plastic kits, and he said they had no idea. Everyone was super excited about it. They thought it was the start of something new and exciting, and as quickly as these boxes arrived, they disappeared again. But does this leave the door open for us to receive some starter sets from Games Workshop containing plastic models? Absolutely, and I really hope that happens. So the next thing is, we know we're getting new figures. We know that from the Kislev article, but we don't know entirely what that means for Warhammer Fantasy collections that either you already own or that are still for sale on the Games Workshop website. So for example, if you look at the Cities of Sigmar faction, there are so many Warhammer Fantasy models that have been rolled into this faction. We still have Karl Franz that we can buy. There are loads of dwarves and dark elf models you can buy. There are loads of different Empire models. So that leaves things in a really confusing place. Does it mean that we are going to be able to use these models again? Does it mean there are going to be figures we can use in two different gameplay systems? Basically, we have no idea. I think best case scenario is we will still be able to use these models, and I really hope that is the case. But then one of the things that killed Warhammer Fantasy was the fact that everyone went out, they bought their armies, they had no incentive to go out and buy anything new. So somehow Games Workshop is going to have to be tackling that problem. How are they going to be trying to get people to buy something new rather than just head onto eBay, pick up an old used Empire army and just roll with that for the old world? There is a possibility that, as we'll talk about in a moment, it could be set in a different time period. Maybe these models just won't work in that setting somehow, but I really hope they don't go down that route. But I mean, loads of these models are absolutely fantastic. I've bought so many of these models this week because I'm really keen to go back and play 8th edition fantasy. But who knows? They're either going to become redundant or we are still going to be able to use them, and they're going to expand with new armies and encourage people to buy them in that way. Now, they've said that they want to use this as an opportunity to focus on aspects of Warhammer Fantasy that have never been explored before, and one of the big focuses at the moment is Kislev. But when they showed the map of the old world so far, it really only covers this red box here. So there are massive entire continents of the old world that so far we have no idea if they're going to return. But let's face it, there is so much of this map that we have not seen in Warhammer Fantasy. There's Araby, there's Nippon, absolutely loads. Now, is the entire thing going to primarily be set just in the Empire with Norsca as the main antagonist? We don't really know. If they do bring something like Nippon back, I feel like it could aesthetically clash a little bit with the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, who all have these kind of samurai themed armor and headdresses. But I think the next thing we can confirm is that the Empire is going to be super important to the old world. So far, the map has focused on them. In this little clip here, they're showing different factions of the Empire. More on that in a moment. But again, it just really makes me wonder what's going to happen to the existing models. Right, next question. What about the scale? Now, I'm really hoping this is not going to change. Some people I've already heard are really keen for them to change the scale, and I really don't want them to do that. Now, I know that it would allow for larger scale battles, and if they go back to the rank and file mechanics of 8th edition, then smaller scale could work really well, but I want it to stay the same. I don't know what the majority of people think about that. Now, the gameplay system, are they going to completely overhaul it? I'm not sure. If you search Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition rank and file on Google, this was like the vision that you would see for pretty much all the armies in Fantasy. It was really not beginner friendly at all. There's like 180 pages of rules for Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition. If you compare that to Age of Sigmar, it's an enormous difference. But then Forge World isn't necessarily known for being totally beginner friendly and light on their rulebooks either. I think they ended up writing 2 rulebooks for Warhammer Fantasy. This one here that I'm showing at the moment is actually incredibly rare now, but it was quite amazing and detailed based on the fact they seem to be going on a deep dive of the lore of the Empire during the time of the 3 Emperors. It does appear that it could be quite complicated and maybe not so beginner friendly. Now, I guess they don't want to make it too simple to the point where it clashes with Age of Sigmar, but I definitely think they maybe need to find a middle ground between being too complicated and being simple, because there are people out there, believe it or not, who absolutely love the mechanics of 8th edition. Equally, there are just as many people, if not more, I would say, who love the mechanics of Age of Sigmar just for the ease of being able to chuck some models together and play. Now, what do I think about a starter set? I've heard a lot of people suggesting that because they are focusing so much on Kislev, we could be seeing a Kislev versus Norska starter set box, which I think would be absolutely amazing. It really is too early to say one way or the other what we're going to get in that box, but I would totally be down for Kislev versus Norska. And Norska themselves, although there were Chaos Marauder models, they never specifically made them a tabletop faction in Games Workshop. If you've played Total War Warhammer and you've seen the Norska faction, you will see how much potential there is there for an incredible faction on the tabletop. Now, the last thing I will say is the time period appears to be, based on the map they produced, to be set during the time of the 3 Emperors. Now, this age was basically when there was a massive civil war in the Empire, and there were different people trying to claim for the throne. It lasted a few centuries, so we're talking hundreds of years of time span here. Why do people think it's going to be set during this time? Well, if you watch that little video clip and you pick out the names, we've got Ludwig, Sigmarsund, Wilhelm, and Magritta. All of these names are associated with the age of the 3 Emperors. Now, I was talking to another YouTuber who I get on really well with, Lawmaster of Sotek, and he was saying that he thinks there is something very definitely wrong with the fact these names are all appearing, because if you know the original lore of the Age of 3 Emperors, none of these people apparently existed in the same place at the exact same time. They could have been like a generation or 2 apart. What I personally think is happening here, not knowing the lore as well as he does, is that they could actually be retconning or rewriting the history of this period of time and massively expanding on it. And I think he also said that some of these names, maybe it was Magritta, could possibly be in the wrong region for where you'd expect her to be. But who knows what this map is representing? It could be sites where big battles are going to happen. We don't really know. But yeah, I had to look this up. The Age of the 3 Emperors begins around 1547 and ends in 2304, whereas the 8th edition Empire Army book says that the Warhammer world is currently in the year 2522. We're talking about maybe 200 years before Warhammer Fantasy, but if they're going right back to the start of the Age of the 3 Emperors, we could be looking at even around 1,000 years earlier. Now, if they pull this off and they do it correctly, and this is indeed the time they're going to set it in, this could be fantastic news. Number one, it would mean that this is a really good point for brand new fans to jump into the storyline so that it's set in the world we know and love. But if you are totally new and you know nothing about the lore of Warhammer Fantasy, you're not going to be intimidated by all that backstory that you know nothing about, but then you can delve into it as and when you want, because all of it will still be relevant. And I've also seen quite a few people who are long-time fans who've explored the lore to death, believe it or not, who said that they'd be only interested in returning if they're doing something different with the storyline. So if they get this right, they should be appealing to old and new fans. And finally, I guess the last thing I want to say in this video is I've seen a few people suggesting there's a possibility that the release of the old world could tie in with the release of Total War Warhammer 3. Now, that would make sense for a number of reasons. Number one, the two things would massively help generate interest in each other. And number two, I think they are heavily rumoring a big update to the Kislev faction in Total War Warhammer 3. They're rumored to be a major faction, so it would neatly tie in with the release of the new Kislev models. But yeah, I think that is pretty much the end of what I want to talk about in this video. I've run through my thoughts, what we know so far, what we don't know, what we're hoping, what we're worried about, where we think it's set, what we think it's going to be. But yeah, let me know down below what you were excited about. Let me know if you agree with what I've said, if you disagree, if there are any other rumours you think are going to be more likely. And yeah, I've obviously got loads more videos planned, including there's been the new rumour engine picture that I really need to talk about. And of course, I need to get back to my model range reviews. But yeah, don't forget to like the video, don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and don't forget to check out my new Warhammer Facebook group. But thanks for watching, and I will see you guys really soon.